I see a kind of almost like a return to that system now as well, after having Aniar 10 years and kind of going with this kind of Nordic style of plating and cooking and looking to products. I can see a lot of younger chefs actually reacting against that now and going back to the classics. And
oh, really?
Yeah, definitely. Some of our younger chefs are very, very much interested in this classical technique and sauces and reductions and I was surprised because a lot of it I thought not have gone, but just it wouldn't come back so soon. And I suppose, I mean, it's good. It's good to have a balance between the two, but it's certainly something that I think that that's not going to go away. And you probably have, like, for me, the two poles are, maybe there was three poles. Like I think the Japanese tradition is very strong as well in the moment, and the making of koji and all this kind of fermentation, that's very, very strong, and it influences us as well. But you kind of have that pushing against this French system where everything is reduced and made kind of layered in a more complex way. And I think that's kind of different to the Japanese way of doing things.
That's interesting, I guess, because I'm thinking of a lot of young chefs, let's say 10, 15 years ago, almost wanted to kind of leapfrog the classic techniques and go straight to doing more modernist and more kind of Nordic inspired and fermentation. And so it's good to hear that you're seeing chefs as well who are interested in going back.
And I suppose what I found as well is that when you leapfrog, when chefs leapfrog them or whatever they did, I think when you get to the root of a lot of the Nordic, the technical aspect of it is very, very similar, because it's European again, and the plating tradition might be different, or some of the ingredients might be different, but at the end of the day, you're still frying meat, you're still making sauces, and so there is that base that is very important, and the technical side of things that is never going to disappear. I think that's more about best practice, as opposed to, I know it's tied to the French tradition, but for me, it's a question of best practice and how do you cook something well, and how do you make it taste good. And of course, then you overlap the regionality or the regional differences on top of it. But at the same time, I think that for me was I suppose what spurred me into wanting to make sure that we had a solid understanding of technique was that just so many chefs coming out of different kitchens and saying that they hadn't pan fried anything in 3 or 4 years and stuff like that. And for me, like, these are quite fundamental things, and I think that's what makes cooking fun. You know, that kind of almost a contingency, or that you need to be there in that element. You need to be there, and it's not just a kind of on-off process. And I was just surprised, how many places had let that go, and so that's why I think that style of classical cooking, and even now when we braise something, they say, "Do you want to braise it old school?" Which is just like you put it in the oven, and so it's like the new school is the sous vide, but it's like, will we braise it old school? Even they say old school, but I always think like pound for pound, the flavor is always going to come out better in the kind of older way. It's not to say that I don't use the newer way, and it depends on how much we're cooking and all that. But at the same time, if I'm at home, it's always going to be that kind of on the older methods.